Okay, today what we're doing is we're replacing the speed sensor on this 1992 Honda Accord LX 2.2 liter automatic transmission. And the speed sensor is supposed to tell the ECM what speed to shift the transmission at. And being as we're having tranny shifting problems, although the tranny works, it just doesn't shift like it's supposed to in the proper RPMs and all that in the right gear. What we're going to do is we went ahead and removed the speed sensor. And what you got to do to remove the speed sensor is take off that big old thing, that big black thing that goes from here to the air cleaner, and then reach down there and right there is where the speed sensor goes. You see those two mounting holes? And then there's one thing in the middle. That thing in the middle's got a little rod in it. And that rod spins. And when it spins, it tells that sensor to tell the ECU which RPM to shift the transmission at. And so we went ahead and removed that. This is the speed sensor. I've taken it apart. There's a couple different parts to it. This little thing right here. And this is the housing that it sits in. And then I guess this is the sensor right here, the electronic part of it. And on the back side of this sensor is where that round part sits in there. I noticed that there's a bunch of grease in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and clean this stuff up with brake clean and blow it out with compressed air and put new grease in it. And then we'll replace that part. If it doesn't fix it, that means we need to replace the part. And the part is $90 at Advance Auto Parts. So we're going to go ahead and clean it up and see if we can repair it without having to replace it. And then we'll go ahead and reinstall it. And if it takes care of the shifting problem, we know that this is the speed sensor that was going bad on this car. So I'll get it cleaned up and then I'll reinstall it. And then I'll show you what it looks like when it's reinstalled and cleaned up. Okay, there's the speed sensor. That's it right there. It's now installed. Be sure to spin the little sensor inside to make it line up with the spline that comes out of the transmission on that little rod. Be sure not to force it in because you will damage the sensor. And that is now installed on this 1992 Honda Accord LX 2.2 liter automatic transmission. Okay, what we're doing now is we're going to go ahead and take off the EGR valve. And the EGR valve is this right here. It's the thing with the vacuum hose going to it. And the reason we're taking that off is because we have an intermittent miss. Yeah, we'll look at it from above here. It's that vacuum hose right here that goes to it. That's the EGR valve. There's a plug going to it, a vacuum hose, and two looks like 12mm nuts holding it down to the intake. So we're getting ready to remove that. We'll pull it apart, scrape all the carbon out of it, clean it out as good as we can, and then reinstall it. And hopefully that'll take care of the miss that we're having, the intermittent miss, because everything else has been done. The plugs have been done, the cap and rotor have been done, and it seems to run pretty fine except for that little mist that pops up every once in a while. So we're getting ready to take that off. And once we have that off, I'll show you what it looks like when the part is disconnected from the intake manifold itself. Okay, this is the EGR valve removed. This is what we're going to clean up right here. All this carbon around the round hole right there. And in the rectangle hole, there's a bunch of carbon also. Around this round hole, there's a little push rod in there that's actuated by this diaphragm right here. So what you do is you make sure that it's working by pushing that part of the diaphragm down. Looks like it's working, but there's a lot of carbon around there that can make it stick. So what we're going to do is clean all that off and make sure that it moves freely. EGR valve. This right here is the pile of stuff that came out of the EGR valve. See how clean it is in there now? All that carbon was clogging up everything in this EGR valve. The way that I got it out was with the screwdriver. Just digging in there and scratching. Just dig in there and scrape as much as you can. Scrape all that off. Scrape all this out. I had a little wire brush that I cleaned out this thing right in here with. Clean that out. And then you blow it out with compressed air. And then you lube it up with some penetrating lubricant to make sure that it's operating properly. So that's how you clean an EGR valve. We're getting ready to mount it back up. And hopefully it'll make it stop that mist that we had going on there. Okay, we're getting ready to go for a test drive now. We're going to go ahead and start this car. It's off right now. So here we go. She's lit. Pretty smooth. Okay, the tranny seemed like it shifted a little smoother, just going from drive to park and reverse and all that. Somehow it didn't engage as rough as it did before. So we have to go for a drive and see if that speed sensor took care of the shifting problem. Okay, we already have operating temperature on the coolant, so let's go ahead and go for a cruise and see what happens here. Let's get on it a little bit and see if it stays in gear. We are stopped right now, and we'll get on it a little bit here. So we'll keep an eye on the gauges to see if it shifts like it's supposed to. Okay, here we go. Disengaged. I tell you what, it's a lot better than it was, and it may need a speed sensor. And that would be the electrical part that we weren't able to do anything with on the speed sensor. So got to watch out for people acting like prairie dogs out here. It feels pretty good. If you drive it normal, it seems like it'll work. Okay, we got her mashed. but it still is disengaging when you give it at certain RPMs. It's idling nice. It's running really nice. You can jump out in front of stuff. Okay, we got some brats on a little go-kart up here. You gotta watch out for them. You don't want to kill anybody. There's my main beast right there. I think we're going to drive it for a little bit. Let's go ahead and put the beast, we'll go ahead and put the main beast up. We'll drive this little pea shooter for a little bit, because we're not putting a tranny in it. So let's go ahead and park the vet in the garage. It's engaging a little harsh now that it's warmed up, but not too bad. Yeah, it's got a clunk to it. Okay, we'll go ahead and pull the vet in the garage right now, just so we can play with something a little different. It's a big shaggy dog. That little dog isn't even disturbing it. That dog's so cool, he doesn't even walk fast. Holy smokes, that's a big plane. See if we can catch it going over here.